A partially valid, a half-truth, if you will, is
Yeah.
being pushed.
I can't wait to find out all sorts of new and exciting things I didn't know about myself.
So you just hate Jews, bro?
Yeah, you're
It's
just an anti-Semite. Congratulations.
You're
Go
not
join.
What would you say?
Exactly.
Well, that's different. It's not different. It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's
That just we are the only society on earth who has the obligation to self-destruct, to blame ourselves for every problem that has ever existed, and we just think of ourselves as the worst human beings who are responsible for every bad.
How many Muslims are trying to stop Boko Haram? How many Muslims were confronting ISIS? How many Muslims, the extremists always win. So the peaceful majority, which I know many, they're irrelevant.
Good morning, Misfits. All right, what's today? Is it Woke Wednesday? I believe it is. It is. It's Woke Wednesday. How's everybody doing? Let's pull up the chat real quick. We're going to try to cruise through this thing because we have a guest today, and it's a really good guest. Good morning, Funmon. Machine, I saw you. Machine said something like, I've missed Zach for weeks. Where you been? You got no excuses. Bad Moon, Bumba, Great Guy Gary, Han Jancock. How's everybody doing today? All right, so let's jump right into it because, again, we got this packed show. Why is that still there? Go to the heartbeat, Brent, but yeah, there you go. That's not supposed to be there. It's happening again. I was thinking about naming the show Groundhog Day, but we talked about this yesterday, okay? So we got this, thumbnail where I'm Bill Murray in Groundhog Day, and we got pretty much all the woke right behind me. And what do I mean by it's happening again? All right, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, where TDS basically just removes all critical thinking from people's arguments, and they deploy the same the woke right now is deploying the same tactics as the woke left, right? And what do I mean by woke right? We talk about this every Wednesday. I remind everybody what woke means. Woke is not a leftist ideology. Woke means awake. Okay, they're awake to an oppressor. There's a victim mentality. It's identity politics. Somebody else is responsible for all my problems. With the left, it's been TDS for over a decade. With the woke right, it's Israel, Jews, and it's getting tired. But yesterday we touched on this. I'm going to show you a clip, and we're going to break this thing down, where it was Owen Schroyer and Harrison, what is his name? Harrison Smith? I don't know. The one on the right. And Alex Stein. Now, I like Alex Stein, but honestly, at this point, he's getting to a point where I'm like, I might not like him anymore because I'm just tired of seeing these people grift off of this, and I would put him in that category. So, but before we bring in our guest, I have it's a long video, but you got to watch it, okay? It's like 4 minutes long. I'm going to put it on 1.25 speed so we can trim it down a little bit. But our guest that's coming up, he's a political commentator, and he probably delivered one of the best debate performances, arguments that I've ever seen. I've watched it several times, and it's just every time I watch it, I'm just like, it's like I'm watching a football game. I'm like, yeah, go. But Shabbos, and I'm gonna butcher his name. Kestenbaum. No, that's not bad. Shabbos Kestenbaum, political commentator for PragerU. He'll be joining us soon. Not here yet, but we'll be pulling him in. And if you guys have never seen him, he's very intelligent, and he delivers this debate performance right here. 4 minutes, 52 seconds. Let's trim that down by going 1.25. That's not going to be too fast for you. And I'm going to play this full screen. I want you guys to watch this so you know who our guest is and why you should pay attention to what he's saying. All right, here we go.
Again, I find it very bizarre that in a topic that did not include the word Israel, the only country we actually discussed was Israel. I actually believe that we should end all foreign aid, but that includes all foreign aid, not only one obsessive country. You mentioned FARA. Let's talk about FARA.
One sec, guys. I'm gonna turn up the volume a little bit. We always have technical difficulties. It's the unofficial name of the Daily Breakdown. Let's kick this up to 10 and see what happens. I think that should do it. All right, and continue.
Agent Registry Act is a
There we
law
go.
imposed by the United States in order to block the access of Nazi Germans to the United States. Qatar currently has 31 registered FARA agents compared to Israel, which has 15. From 2021 to 2025 alone, Qatari FARA agents logged 627 in-person meetings with members of Congress, which is more than every other country by 300 meetings. So let's talk about AIPAC. I don't support AIPAC, largely because they're pretty ineffective. AIPAC is an organization comprised exclusively of Americans, by Americans, and for Americans. You don't have to like them, but that doesn't mean they're an agent of a foreign country. Just like Indian Americans have UNISPAC, the Armenian Americans have ENCA, Greek Americans have HALC, or the Ukrainian American community, which is the UCCA. Americans are free to lobby as they would like. And if you want to make laws against the lobbying of Americans to their government, then fine, let's discuss the policy and legislation, although unfortunately all we've done is obsess over one country. In 2024, it's true, AIPAC is an American lobbying group, just like the NRA or the Chamber of Commerce. They spent roughly $100 million on lobbying and elections. In the same year, China spent $500 million. Japan spent $400 million. Big Pharma, $400 million. Saudi Arabia, $310 million. Qatar, $250 million. But you wouldn't know this because my esteemed opponent is obsessed with only one country and one country only. But what about the fact that Israel controls American foreign policy? Isn't all of our Congress bought and paid for by Israel? If that's true, that somehow Israel controls American foreign policy, then someone clearly needs to explain to me how is it that President Truman forced the Israelis to stop its advances against the Egyptian army in 1948, which actually would have destroyed the Egyptian army unilaterally. President Eisenhower forced the state of Israel to pull back from the Sinai in 1956. President Johnson refused to greenlight a preemptive strike by Israel against the Egyptians in 1967. President Nixon prevented the IDF from crushing the Egyptian Third Army. President Ford forced the Israelis to withdraw from strategic areas under the Sinai II Agreement. President Carter pressured the Israelis to fully withdraw from Sharm el-Sheikh. President Reagan applied pressure to Israelis to withdraw from Beirut. Of course, President Bush, the senior, forbade the Israelis from responding to Saddam's 1991 Scud missile attack. And a point that you failed to address is if Israel actually controls the United States government, how come that the greatest existential threat to the state of Israel of the last 20 years, the Iranian nuclear deal, JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, of which Bibi Netanyahu, AIPAC, and almost every single Jewish American lobbied their member of Congress against, still passed? So if Israel controls America, they're doing a pretty shitty job. And that brings me to my final point. You had said the only reason America has enemies in the Middle East is because of Israel. Well, that doesn't make any sense because, as I mentioned, the first war the United States ever fought as a country was against Islamists off the coast of Libya, which was more than 140 years before the creation of the State of Israel, which really brings me to my final point. The problem we have in the United States is not something the Jews or something Israel. The problem we have in the United States is the rise of radical Islam. In the last 25 years, I am just going to name just a couple of incidents, so indulge me. Nice, France, radical Muslim terrorist. The 2017 Paris attacks, radical Muslim. The reason TSA checks your shoes in airports, radical Muslim. The underwear bomber, radical Muslim. The New Orleans ISIS attack, radical Muslim. Westminster, Boston Marathon, Manchester Arena, Pan Am bonding, Fort Hood, Beltway sniper attacks, the list goes on. Bali bombing, Mortarville Rigby, USS Cole bombing, London Bridge attack, Madrid train, Charlie Hebdo, San Bernardino, US Marines, Beirut bombing, Little Rock Army shooting, Chattanooga military attack, Pulse nightclub massacre, New York City ISIS truck attack, Boulder, Colorado firebombing attack, DC shooting. Jews who wear kippas are not going to blow you up on subway stations, but unfortunately radical Islamists will. So let's get serious. There have been more than 58,000 Islamic terrorist attacks in almost every country on planet Earth since 9/11. So while we obsess about the only democracy in the Middle East that comprises less than 9 million people, a quarter of whom are Muslim Arabs, the actual Islamists see the weakness of the West and they're going to take advantage of it. So is there foreign influence in the United States? Absolutely. We have just ganged up on the wrong country.
Beautiful.
Again, I find it
beautiful. Okay. So I had people in the chat going, you have to slow that down. Shabbos talks very fast. He's got that Ben Shapiro cadence. And I did hear him come in. So we're going to be bringing him in now. Let me just pull that. Oh, you know what? I forgot to do the lower third. We're going to have to, we'll type it. But let me just, I am my own producer, by the way. So every time we do this, it's like, and I shouldn't be. I am horrible at the internet, but I think I can figure this out. Let's all say hello, maybe, to Come, there he is, Shabbos. Is it It's Shabbos, right? Am I saying it right, or Shabbos? I don't know.
Shabbos, but close enough.
Shabbos. Okay, Shabbos. Shabbos. I'm so glad you came on. We met at the Combat Anti-Semitism Summit, and I wanted to get you on because I just, like I was saying before you jumped on, I saw that debate that you have pinned on your profile, and it's just, you and Nick Matau both do a very good job of delivering information, a bunch of information that is just spot on, very fast. I'm more of a, like a boxer where I'm just like, I just come in and throw the insults, but you guys are very good at that. But go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell my audience a little bit about what you do and what you're trying to achieve here with this social media experiment.
Sure. Well, it's good to be here. I do appreciate it. And it was great meeting you, even though I have been looking at your work for a while now. So thank you for everything you've been doing. In terms of who I am, so I'm a first-generation American. My dad was born in Japan. My mom was born in England. They moved here about 30 years ago. So born and raised in the United States. I'm also an Orthodox Jew. Typically, I wear my yarmulke, but it's been a bad hair day. So today's the baseball hat. And I grew up recognizing and appreciating what I said at the Republican convention, which is American values are Jewish values and Jewish values are American values. They're not contradictory. They're actually quite complementary.
Mm-hmm.
Never experienced religious discrimination before in my life. And then flash forward to October 7th of 2023. I was a student at Harvard University. And I always say that the story of October 7th, which of course was the single largest day massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, that story is really not about October 7th because Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, they're radical Muslims, they're Islamic terrorists, and they commit acts of terrorism. Definitionally, it's what they do, it's who they are. So when terrorists commit acts of terror, it's bad. We should kill the jihadis, but it's what they do. To me, the story is really October 8th because I was on the political left. I was 9 years old when I knocked on doors for Barack Obama. I was 12 when I volunteered for the Cory Booker Senate campaign. I was a Bernie bro in 2020. I voted for Bernie Sanders in 2020.
We forgive you. We forgive
Yeah,
you.
exactly. I'm repenting. I'll talk about Trump in a second. So I repented. But the same people that I allied myself with, that I marched with, that I voted for, those who introduced themselves with preferred gender pronouns, who took knees for Black Lives Matter, who marched at the Supreme Court when Roe v. Wade was overturned. You have to believe me. I can show you the screenshots, but you have to believe me when I tell you that they were literally the first ones to call for the globalization of the Intifada. They were the first ones to call for the eradication of Western civilization. They were the first ones to chant for the death of the United States. And people need to remember that 48 Americans were killed on October 7th. More than a dozen Americans were taken hostage, the majority of whom were killed in captivity. And why do we care about Harvard, Columbia, Penn, Yale, UCLA? It's because these are institutions of higher learning that purport to train the next generation of American leaders. And statistically speaking, they're kind of right. It's not an exaggeration at all to state, again, statistically speaking, I probably sat in a room with a future congressman, a future senator, even a future president of the United States, because Harvard disproportionately wields an incredible amount of power.
Mm-hmm.
And if these are America's future leaders or future policymakers, judges, jurors, authors of the books our kids and grandkids are going to read, then America is at a dangerous inflection point. I mean, take it from someone who saw it and experienced it directly and personally. The political indoctrination at America's Ivy League universities is a national scandal. It's a plague. It's an embarrassment. And my paradigm shift, my political evolution into conservatism was very much catalyzed by what I was experiencing at Harvard. To make a long story short, as I'm figuring out my new politics, the Trump campaign does a tremendous amount of outreach, and they kind of had me on board. So I worked a little bit on the Trump campaign, and now I work very closely with the White House in terms of combating religious discrimination, reforming higher education, a strong foreign policy, of course. And now I'm a political commentator at PragerU. Very much proud to be on mainstream MAGA conservatism, not the woke right bullshit, which I'm sure we'll get to in a second.
Absolutely.
And the last point I'll say, because I know I give long answers, so I
No,
apologize.
you're good. I'm putting your text box up, so keep going.
Okay, appreciate it. But I will say that people have this misconception that I became a conservative because of Israel, and it's really not true. I mean, certainly I'm very proud to support Israel. I'm not embarrassed or ashamed to admit that at all. But my catalyst was, again, the discrimination of American citizens by the elites in this country and the willingness and the normalization on behalf of the Democratic Party to allow this to continue. That was the catalyst. I'm embarrassed and almost ashamed that it took me so long to realize the moral bankruptcy and the intellectual hypocrisy of leftism and the Democratic Party. But nevertheless, I'm very, very, as I said, very proud to be part of the conservative movement, whether it is immigration, tariffs, the economy, or foreign policy. I'm proud to associate myself with MAGA.
Yeah, it's funny because it's funny we have a very similar story, but on the opposite ends. I mean, my speech at the Combat Anti-Semitism thing, it was based on what I saw on October 8th, and I think I made my post either on October 8th or 9th where I said what happened to September 12th mentality in this country, where I was viewing the behavior of people who were essentially aligning with Islam instead because I really didn't see it like right away. I was like, I don't know if it's not Jews. It's got like, I mean, I don't know if you remember the protests outside of New York. There was a guy holding up his phone and it had a swastika on it. And he was like, he was a brown person and he was on the left. And I was like, that's crazy. But then shortly after that, I actually saw my own side. Not all, not even most, but enough where I was like, hey, this isn't us. And I came at my position from an anti-Islam, not pro-Jew. I didn't really get into the defending Jews and Israel and what have you and Zionism until I don't know weeks later. But it's funny that you said that you were on the left because once I started really gaining steam on this, I had so many people in your similar situation that said, I saw your videos, I saw you defending, and I am completely switching sides. And when you get red pilled on something and you switch sides, you kind of switch to every position. It's weird, right? Where it's like, wait a minute, not only am I now on the right because the left is just crazy and they're attacking Jews and going pro-Islam, but the right's making a lot of sense about immigration. The right's making a lot of sense about crime. The right's making a lot of sense about XYZ because you're shielded in your bubble when you're on one side.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And it's funny because the Groypers, in particular Nick Fuentes, they'll always attack me as, this guy's a leftist, he's new to the movement. Now, leaving aside the fact that at one point, President Donald Trump was an actual pro-choice registered Democrat, leaving aside the fact that J.D. Vance was very willing to compare Donald Trump to Adolf Hitler, leaving all of those things aside, leaving aside the fact that RFK literally ran against the dude less than 2 years ago, I find it very ironic that those same Groypers who say, we can't really trust this guy, they will applaud like seals their virgin messiah who says, all right, now it's time to vote for the Democrats because, F the Republicans or whatever. So there's no moral consistency or political consistency. But I'm glad you kind of mentioned this, and I think it's a really great way of framing it, where you said it was more of anti-Islam than pro-Jewish. Listen, I would love if people were pro-Jewish. I'm cool with that, but ultimately, I'm also cool if they're not. I think what is way more important is that people wake up, and this is what I mentioned in that video you played, to radical Islam. I mean, just last night in New Jersey's 12th congressional district, the winner was Adam Hamway, who was literally, it's important for people to know, he served as a defense witness for the World Trade Center bomber of 1993. Okay, he
volunteered for an Al Qaeda volunteer group,
a front group. Yes, exactly. He worked for an Al Qaeda front group. People need to wake up to the threat of radical Islam. As I mentioned in that video, Jews named Shabbos Kestenbaum who wear yarmulkes. If you see us on a subway with a backpack, I promise you, there'll be lox and bagels inside of it. That's about it. But if you see, unfortunately, I wish this wasn't true, but disproportionately it is true. The GTI Global Terrorism Index has clearly documented that 87% of all terrorist attacks in the world are committed by radical Islam.
Yeah, 66,700 in the past, 50 or so years. And when you bring this up, they call it Islamophobia, and they say, oh, that's not. So in my intro, I had Tommy Robinson on, and he framed it perfectly. He goes, the peaceful majority are irrelevant because the vast majority of them, they won't tell on their neighbors, and the vast majority of them, because he was putting a reference together about this town, Rovrum, and he was out of all the people in that town, there was only, I don't know, 20 or so, and out of all the brothers, cousins, coworkers, etc., they all knew it was going on. Nobody reported it to the police. So the peaceful majority are irrelevant, and that doesn't work in other ideologies because, I mean, if I saw other Christians, doing things, I would call the police, but they have a religious doctrine to put their Muslim brothers over national law or anything like that. I don't want to jump into that. I actually really do want to get into a couple of things here. There's this. I don't know if you saw this, but the title of my show is "It's Happening Again," right? And I got the Groundhog Day thing here, and we'll get to the Megyn Kelly, Sean Ryan thing. But here's this. I guess it was a debate between, it says what, baby boomers versus millennials, right? These are some old millennials, but you have Owen Schroyer, Alex Stein, and Harrison Smith. And I want you to listen to their arguments, right? Because what I mean by it's happening again is we are literally going through the 2016 leftists who ignore all facts, and they essentially have developed TDS via IDS, right? Where they're now saying they're taking Trump out of context. It's like the Fine People hoax. Let's do a quick review of this, and then I'm sure that you'll be able to articulate what they're going through. And I have a couple of clips. So here.
Foreign policy is controlled by a foreign country that blackmails and buys our politicians in order to do it. And $5 trillion plus have been spilled in the Middle East because of it, and tens of thousands of American lives have died in the Middle East because of it. And our generation is saying...
Now, quick pause. You notice what they're doing? They're conflating Bush with Trump, right? Everything that Owen said up to this point is true, and that's a clever trick that people use where they try to conflate two different things. Like Obama's kids in cages. It's Trump's fault. It's like, well, that wasn't Trump. But real quick, the next part is how he's going to try to tie that in and blame Trump.
We are done.
And the Muslim refugee crisis happens.
Yeah, that is totally effing insane.
That's not insane.
What did I say that's not true?
Israel.
Okay, see? He didn't say anything that's not true. He just wasn't talking about Trump or Israel or what have you.
Does not control our foreign policy.
Trump just said it. He literally just said it. He had an event in Israel. He said, Marian Adelson is my top donor, and she loves Israel more than America.
Pause. Okay. Here's the clip that they're referring to. Less than a minute.
Yeah, we're very responsible for so much, including getting me thinking about Golan Heights, which is probably one of the greatest things to ever happen to Israel.
Actually, I'm not even going to play the whole clip. You get the point. This is Owen's trying to say that Trump did a speech in Israel, and he was talking about Miriam Adelson being his top donor, and she loves Israel more than America. Obviously, he's joking, and it was just like a little quip. But he's talking about Golan Heights. He's not talking about the war, the decision to go to war. So next up, and then I'm going to get Shabbos to give his,
That is not what he just
Look.
He literally just said we did it for Israel.
No, he didn't.
No. He said so they no longer pose a threat to Israel. He said
perfect. Okay. Now we're basically done with this clip. I'm going to show you the next clip. See what they're doing? They're conflating two different speeches, taking it out of context and wrapping it all together with Bush's wars. Okay, so here's the next clip. This is the speech they're referring to.
The United States military began major combat operations in Iran. Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime, a vicious group of very hard, terrible people. Its menacing activities directly endanger the United States, our troops, our bases overseas,
I don't hear him saying
and our
Israel.
allies throughout the world. For 47 years, the Iranian regime has chanted death to America and waged an unending campaign of bloodshed and mass murder, targeting the United States, our troops, and the innocent people in many, many countries. Among the regime's very first acts was to back a violent takeover of the U.S.
We get all the way to 2 minutes.
Including 46 Americans, while taking 12 militias that have soaked the earth with blood and guts. And it was Iran's proxy, Hamas, that launched the monstrous October 7th attacks on Israel,
2 minutes.
slaughtering more than 1,000 innocent people, including 46 Americans, while taking 12.
Okay, done. So basically, Trump goes and does a speech saying Mary Nagelson's one of my top donors. She's responsible for, she's helpful in getting Golan Heights. And then he goes into his speech, what they say, that he said, we did this for Israel. He mentions Israel one time in that speech. He says the reason we went in was for America. And he just comes in and even when he mentions Israel, he's like, including 46 Americans, like you said. So do you see the similarities between the way the woke left is now trying to argue points and the way that we've seen the left argue points for over a decade?
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons that it's pretty accurate to call them the woke right, because they adopt the exact same tactics as the woke left, where they are deliberately deceitful, where they take things out of context, or they just blatantly lie. First of all, let me just go through a laundry list of things where Owen is just wrong. And I've actually debated Owen once before. I haven't posted on my Twitter, which, you know what, you inspired me. Tonight I'll post the full debate on my Twitter. The reason I haven't is I was just so intellectually unimpressed by this individual. When I asked him basic follow-up questions, he had no responses other than to make like weird monkey noises. So I just left early. It was so embarrassing to be there.
Oh, I'm gonna let you cook, but real quick, I'll tell you about my Owen Schroyer debate. He asked me to debate, then he brings in two moderators that are on his side, and we tried a 3-on-1. We're going through this whole debate. Owen is he's not smart. And we get to it was about the Operation in Iran, Midnight Hammer. We get to a point where he's like, Qatar's our greatest ally, and I go, why? How? He goes, we have a military base there. I go, we have a military base in Cuba, and he's like, so you don't think that Qatar's our greatest ally? I'm like, no. I go, they're a strategic partner. They're not an ally, and that's what I'm saying. When you have these debates with these people who are just not smart, they just use talking points and they just repeat the same thing over and over again. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. At one point, he was talking about how, of course, Israel controls the United States and AIPAC is the manifestation of that. And I said, okay, well, then how do you explain the ratification of the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action? And he didn't actually know what that was. So then I had to reframe it as the Iranian nuclear deal. So, oh, yeah, that one. Anyway, so first of all, Israel has controlled the Golan Heights since 1967. Trump didn't give Israel the Golan Heights. They've had it for more than 50 years.
Exactly.
After, as usual, Islamic jihadis tried attacking Israel and they lost. So Israel won the territory back. There are Jews, Christians, Muslims, and Druze who are happily living under Israeli protection in the Golan Heights. Trump did not give Israel that. He simply just allowed the United States to officially recognize the Golan Heights. Whether they recognized it or not would not dispute the fact there are at least, 150,000 people living there as we speak. That's number one. I really take issue with the fact that AIPAC has been relegated to the Israel lobby. It's something Owen always says, Nick always says, Anna Kasparian always says. I think I mentioned this in the debate that you played. You can disagree with AIPAC, and I would agree with you that we should have campaign finance reform, that we should curtail the amount of money flowing into our politics. But it bothers me to no end that AIPAC is called the Israel lobby when it is literally exclusively and specifically comprised of Americans. And by the way, not just American Jews, there are actually more American Christians who identify as Zionists than American Jews. So again, you don't have to like AIPAC, but to make this bizarre media concoction that they're somehow part of a foreign government is objectively not true, because foreign governments legally can't spend any money on elections. They just can't.
It's so funny you say that, because I have this clip right here. We're not going to play the whole clip because it's 4 minutes long, but have you seen this with Cenk?
Yeah.
So essentially, I'm just gonna narrate it for you guys because it's a long clip, and I want to make sure that we get more Shabbos in here than just playing clips all day. This is exactly what Shabbos is talking about. Oh, I got it.
Close enough.
Shabbos is talking about. So this host was like, "Hey, you keep on saying that Israel controls America through lobbying. Israel can't lobby Americans because AIPAC is an American PAC." So he basically goes, "So what you're doing is you're conflating Jews with AIPAC and Israel with AIPAC," and then Cenk just goes off. I think I'm gonna skip to the part where Cenk loses his mind right here.
Jewish people don't actually support this current Netanyahu government. Did you know that? 63%. Hold on.
What you said, which I read out correctly, is that Israel controls the American government through donations to 94% of Congress.
Period.
Jewish people
Nothing
donate to congressmen. The Israeli government does not. So you have conflated. You've said Israel controls. You're meaning Jewish people control. You know that perfectly well.
You're putting words in my mouth. You're literally, and people can see it with their own eyes and hear it with their own ears.
Tell me,
words in my mouth.
tell
want me to
me
explain
on
what actually happens in
on
America?
what legal
enough of
basis?
that. But then Senk just goes off and he goes, "You're anti-Semitic." It's just wild. But it's exactly what you were just saying, right? Now, look, I'm not a big fan of AIPAC. I'm not a big fan of any PAC. AIPAC donates to far left candidates like Cory Booker, and I don't, or is it Cory Booker or Hakeem Jeffries, I think. And I just can't get behind any organization that donates to any leftist or Democrat because I think that that's anti-American. However, AIPAC is doing what they are supposed to do. They are advocating for Israel. They are Americans who are advocating for Israel, like we saw in the clip that that we played before you came on. You went through a laundry list of other PACs. They don't care about AAPAC, which is the Arab American Political Action Committee. They don't care about CARE, which is not a PAC, but it still has a lot of influence. The thing that they don't care about the most, which bothers the hell out of me, is all of the China influence. All of the, right now you have Candace Owens in Russia with a bunch of anti-American communists that are just, and she's talking about how great it is. It's like, yes, AIPAC has influence that does put the interests of a foreign country first, or at least at the forefront. Get rid of it, but get rid of all of them, right? And get rid of that policy as opposed to hyperfixating on the Jewish lobby.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, U.S. INPAC is the AIPAC equivalent for the Indian American community, and they're lobbying on behalf of, I believe, 2 billion people. So again, if you want to talk about AIPAC, but to your point, ignore every single other dual American citizenship lobbying group, then what you're really doing is being a nefarious actor. And exactly to your point, Jacob Rees-Mogg, the host of that show, when he says you can't say that Israel controls Congress when this is not Israeli money, these are just Jewish Americans, because that definitely is a trope. But I digress. So that's number one. It's just this dumbing down of our political culture and really just lying to people. I mean, that's what truly bothers me about the woke right. They just lie to you. And Owen does this, Anna does this when they talk about, the $5 trillion. Anna actually says it's $8 trillion, but the $5 trillion that we fought on behalf of a foreign country. They're referring to the fact of this bizarre conspiracy that Israel brought the United States into Iraq, leaving aside the fact that the prime minister at the time was not Benjamin Netanyahu, it was Ariel Sharon, who very publicly and repeatedly stated that you should not go into Iraq because the real enemy is Iran. You should attack their nuclear sites. And he warned President Bush about getting drawn into a long quagmire into Iraq. And it is true, Benjamin Netanyahu, as a private citizen, was asked to testify in front of a House subcommittee about the need to go into Iraq. But so were a bunch of private citizens from a whole host of countries, including Australia and Germany and Poland. But no one focuses on that because that's not part of the grand conspiratorial thinking that, Israel and the Jews are controlling our politics. And that's what really frustrates me about the whole dumbing down of our political culture. It's what frustrates me about the woke right is they will get you angry on things that aren't actually real and then provide zero antidotes or solutions for any of those things. And again, Nick Fuentes is a perfect example of this. He will tell you that the reason you have to work 2-3 jobs and the reason you can't get laid and the reason you can't afford health insurance is because of these nefarious, undefined global cabal of elites. The reason you can't get ahead in life is because something AIPAC and something Bill Ackman and something the Jews. And leaving aside the fact that those things are just not factually accurate, politics, from my perspective, is how do we make your life better through the legislative process? Right? Like health insurance is a good example. How can we create an affordability environment whereby you have health insurance? Because that's a net positive for society. But Nick and the woke right, they don't provide any antidotes.
No.
They sort of accurately diagnose problems. They'll talk about affordability every now and then. They'll talk about the high cost of living every now and then, but then they won't provide any practical solutions. They just want you to be angry. And then they'll continue by saying, I'm the only one speaking the truth. So make sure you're liking and subscribing because everyone else is lying to you. I'm the only one who has that truth. And I was on Jeremy Boring's show a few weeks ago, and I kind of asked him this question. I said, what is the appeal of these individuals? And he said, people really like feeling part of a community, especially a community whereby it's exclusive. Because I have this truth, no one else does. So once you're once you're in this community, you have this secret wealth of knowledge that millions of Americans are looking for.
Dan Bongino calls it hidden knowledge, right? And he accurately describes that like it's what Candace does, like, oh, we don't know, but we know, And but look at this is hilarious, right? The same people that are constantly just saber rattling about foreign influences. Tucker Carlson wants to share power with China, right? MTG says we should be partners with Russia. Candace Owens, again, Russia. says she would happily take Qatar money. And look, I don't like whataboutism, and I don't like pointing out like they're using their own tactics against them. But this is quite literally if you didn't, you're a hypocrite if you're saying it this way. Now,
can I just add very quickly
Go
about
ahead.
this whole while Candace Owens is in Russia, and I think Andrew Tate is coming there as well.
Yeah,
As a Jew,
her husband, Mr. Boyfriend, Mrs. Boyfriend.
as a Jewish person, we are very much commanded to show gratitude and appreciation to Christianity, because it was Christianity that brought about the idea of messianic expectations, the idea that brought about monotheism to the world in a way that we Jews never could, because we were just very small in numbers. So I always say very clearly, publicly, and confidently that way more young Americans should be going to church. I think the post Charlie Kirk bump is really good. I'm just concerned that it's not sustainable long term. So young people, you should be going to church, reading the New Testament, living life in accordance with the teachings of Jesus.
Yeah.
That said, when people like Candace Owens, especially, or Andrew Tate, they go to Russia and they talk about the shared Christian heritage, I want people to understand that Russia has one of the highest rates of abortion in the Western Hemisphere. Russia has one of the highest rates of prostitution in the Western Hemisphere. Russia has one of the fastest growing Muslim populations in the entire world. Russia has one of the lowest weekly church attendance records of any country in the world.
It's like 3%.
Exactly. This is not a Christian country by any stretch of the imagination. They cater and acquiesce to radical Islamist populations like Dagestan, like Chechnya. This is not an ally of the United States. Forget about the politics. Forget about the fact that they invaded an actual Western democracy like Ukraine. This is not a country that you want to associate Christianity with. They have very much turned their back on their long-standing Christian heritage.
So I have a friend. I brought this up the other day on my show. I have a friend who's in the intel community, and he's basically been warning me for a while about the global threat of the partnership between Russia and China, where they're trying to subvert America. I've known about this for years and years and years, but this is a guy he's like I don't want to like say too much, but very high up in the intel community. Let's just put it that way. So I mean, he's not talking about conspiracy theories. He's talking about things that he knows that they're doing. And one of the things that they're doing that's pretty much public knowledge, I'm not sharing information that he gave me, is the way that they're going into our political system through influencers and through, boosting certain accounts, et cetera, et cetera. Like when you see people like Ian Carroll, Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, and others ratioing everybody and getting so many views and so many likes, and it just doesn't really seem like Candace Owens, 6 million subscribers. What they are doing is they are pumping a bunch of money in, and they are creating sometimes organic audience capture, useful idiot, foreign agents through. Some of these people think they really are just so popular, but it's a lot of foreign bots, and it's a lot of, and the way they do it with the NGOs. I was talking about the threat pyramid, where it's basically China at the top, and then you have the proxies: Iran, Cuba, Venezuela, Russia, and others. Then under that, you have NGOs like Roy Neville Singham, who's putting a bunch of money into the protests that are happening all throughout America and all throughout the world. And then you have, like George Soros types. And then there's like the institutions, universities, they put a lot of money into that. And at the very bottom, you have what I call Podcastistan, what people are calling. And what that's doing is it's a pyramid scheme. It literally is just like a pyramid scheme where it all flows up to the top, and they're all pushing this destructive anti-American messaging and trying to say communism is great. Tucker Carlson had on a literal, he had on a CCP teacher who was like, you know what we really need to do? We need to get into the global digital currency, and we need to have the New World Order where China and America are partners. What? This guy was caught in China in 2002 as a spy, sent back to Canada, and then a year later he was brought back to China. He was a journalist, and they gave him a job as a teacher. And now he's going to our American podcasting audience, and he's saying New World Order and global digital currency. And Tucker Carlson goes, "Oh, I think that's the best solution ever." It's like, bro, how do you guys not see it? And I don't see by the way, let's say they're right. Let's say that there's this Jewish control. Jews are really good at hiding it, because I can see in your face foreign interference from all of our adversaries. I do not see the Jewish influence problem, where, I do see advocacy groups, but I don't see some nefarious, very obvious infiltration of our system. But I do with China, Russia, and I don't know why more people don't see it.
I have to say, just piggybacking on that last point. So the Republican Jewish Coalition, which is a group of Americans, it's actually led by Norm Coleman, who's a former American senator from Minnesota, I believe. They had their annual gala in New York. This is 2 nights ago. I was there in attendance, and their CEO, Matt Brooks, who's a great guy, he gets up and he talks about that we at the RJC are very proud to have supported efforts to take down Thomas Massie. You know, we've spent money, and lo and behold, you know, it worked.
Everyone's so shocked. Everyone's so shocked that they did that. By the way, the guy's like, the guy's like super anti-Israel, and people are like, the pro-Israel groups came in and tried to get him out. Yeah, I would too.
But it's not just anti-Israel. I mean, this is a guy who was voting against the MAGA agenda. This is a guy who was voting with the Democrats to keep the government shut down. This is a guy who was voting against the DHS and the border wall.
A lot of people don't even realize that I've covered this exhaustively. Massey was doing that in Trump's first term as well. Massey was the number 2 GOP congressman that voted against Trump in his first term, number 1 across both terms, and he's the third most the number 1 congressman that votes with the other party against the GOP. So he's like gold medal winner of voting against MAGA and the GOP. So it's like, you can take away the Jewish thing and the Israel thing. Why would we have him in the party? It's a 2-party system. It's how our system operates. If he's voting against, it's like imagine if you had a football team, and one of the players just kept on intentionally fumbling the football and giving it to the other team. You'd cut that guy from the team. It just makes sense.
Right. I think one should always be suspect when the people who endorse you are individuals like Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian, Bernie Sanders, and Ro Khanna, but I digress. But anyway, Matt Brooks gets up at this dinner and he says, we're very proud to have lent a hand in ensuring that Thomas Massie was defeated. And he says this publicly, and there are cameras, and he knows it's being recorded because we want to amplify the message of the RJC, the Republican Jewish Coalition. Anyway, Glenn Greenwald gets a clip of this. And he posts on his Twitter, this is yesterday, I think, he says, oh my gosh, they're admitting it publicly. They're using money to unseat members of Congress. I'm like, yeah, it's called lobbying. This has literally been done for 200 years. Every single lobbying group does this. And it would be weird if you're a lobbying group and you spent money to unseat someone and then you don't brag about it. You know who does this? Every single lobbying group on planet Earth, whether it's the Chamber of Commerce, whether it's the NRA, whether it's the Realtors Association, whether it's the Democratic National Association. Every group does this. So again, if you want to have a discussion on there's too much money in politics, then sure, I'm happy to have that conversation. Again, campaign finance reform is something that I believe in, but like, don't pretend that it's the Jewish Americans who are subverting our democracy when they represent a minuscule amount of the lobbying money that's actually spent in the United States.
Oh, they're 199th in lobbying. And I'd love to have the conversation about taking all of the money out of politics. But you know what? The thing that these people conveniently leave out is Thomas Massie raised more money than Ed Galrain. And he also he was aligned with IPAC, who's connected to the Democratic Socialists of America. And he was getting money from Jeff Yass, who's a pro-Zionist Jewish billionaire. It's like they literally just can't accept the fact that they are getting beat at their own game by, I mean, I would say a coalition of people who are just not crazy.
And that's the foundational truth, is that Groypers have elected no one to Congress. Groypers have passed 0 pieces of legislation. They don't build. All they do is blame. And the American people think that their ideas are trash. And so to your point, Thomas Massie actually raised more money. And what really bothered me is people were spitting out this number that AIPAC put $30 million into this race. No. $30 million was the total amount between both candidates in this race. Roughly $16 million was from Thomas Massie and roughly $14 million was from Ed Galrain. But this idea that it was just the Israel lobby, how do you fool 60,000 Kentuckians to vote for a guy that they don't actually like because of money? Are you really trying to convince me that the people of Kentucky are so gosh darn stupid that when they see a commercial saying, hey, Thomas Massie voted against the border wall, hey, Thomas Massie is implicating Trump in a child sex trafficking ring, that you're fooling them. No, these people didn't like the guy. That's what elections come down to.
The
They
thing
don't
is,
like
it's
the
like,
dude.
well, everyone. There's a lot of people that bring up the point. How is Thomas Massey voted in so many different times, 14 times, and then all of a sudden these people change their mind? It's like, well, because we never tried to target Kentucky 4th. It was never important. They never spent any money. They never brought any attention to it. That's how when you bring attention to something, like when you spend a lot of money on advertising and messaging and door knocking and what have you, then those people will wake up. But Kentucky 4th is not something that anybody ever really cared about, because Thomas Massey was just this libertarian sort of, quiet, like, yeah, whatever, he's squishy, but we don't care. It wasn't until he literally started aligning with Democrats and he started attacking the administration very publicly, gaining massive amounts of attention, boosting his platform, and trying to create a movement against MAGA. Why wouldn't we try to get him out? It's Donald Trump's party. All right,
and they also.
I think I have something queued up here. Sean Ryan and Megyn Kelly, and I think I think it was Seth Dillon maybe, but he goes, it started off with, we need to align with the woke right so that we can beat the left, and now it's, we need to align with the left to destroy MAGA, right? And it's like, saw this coming, but let's play this clip. It's just wild, man, because so many people like you and me, we saw it, but there's so many people that didn't. Here we go.
There is, what's core MAGA now?
I have no idea.
I think I know. Trump has said from the beginning...
Pedophile supporting Israeli lobby? Well,
So I'm going to pause it right there, because Sean Ryan basically just said everybody who's core MAGA, right, is a pedophile supporter. And what you're seeing is this... what's it called? Is it called blitzkrieg messaging, right? Where the $7,000, $7,000, $7,000, $7,000. They're doing the same thing now with, you support pedophiles, you support pedophiles, you support pedophiles, you support pedophiles. And it's designed, it's the same, it's designed the same way. All right, so ready? I bet you everybody in the chat is going to finish this, right? 800-588-2300.
Empire.
Exactly. That's what they're doing, right? They're just hammering it in your head, so it's subconsciously in the back of your mind. So when you hear you support pedophiles, it's literally a Marxist tactic of indoctrination. It's so blatantly obvious, and Sean Ryan knows exactly what he's doing. But I'm going to finish playing this clip.
I have no idea.
Need a different acronym. But Trump has said from the beginning that he defines what MAGA is. MAGA is what I say it is, he has said. And he's not wrong. It's his moniker, it's his campaign slogan, and all along he's defined what is and is not MAGA. And he told me personally, MAGA will feel the way I want them to feel. I'll tell them how to feel about this, that, or the other thing, and they will. And he has been totally right on that. The problem for Trump now is that he has defined MAGA literally to those who agree with Mark Levin. If you don't agree with Mark Levin, you're not MAGA, which means you must be a neocon whose main issue is what's in the best interest of Israel. And that defines MAGA down to nothing. It's a nub. So what's that? It's not large. It's not important. It's not cool.
Okay, done with that. So MAGA is now whatever Mark Levin says, right? This woman is broken. She really is. Like Mark Levin, I don't know if you saw the clip where she was like, I'm a secret fan of Mark Levin.
Yeah.
And I said this the other day. I go, these people didn't just they didn't wake up one day and just change their mind. Okay. These people are being paid to change their mind. I told you earlier, sometimes they don't even know they're being paid to change their mind. Sometimes it's just flooding their social media, which boosts their algorithm, which puts a lot of money in their pocket through payouts from, sponsors, et cetera, et cetera. And then they have like a subconscious, like go with the flow, audience capture, social media bubble thing. I think some of them know they're being paid by, I think some of them are actual foreign agents. I would put Tucker at the top of the list as far as probabilities. Hassan Piker obviously is right now being investigated. But the way, like I told you earlier, it's the pyramid scheme. where they literally just recruit other people. Like, I don't think Myron Gaines knows he's a foreign agent. I don't think he knows he's being paid. I think he's literally just like, yeah, like Jake Shields, they're too dumb to figure that out. But there are smart people who are in the middle tier. And I think Megyn Kelly might be one of them too. So.
Yeah, and Podcastistan today is just the same 13 individuals interviewing each other because they don't have original ideas and there aren't that many of them.
Well, also no serious people will bring them on now.
Right, exactly. That's why when people ask me, are you concerned about Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson? And I say, look, I'm concerned when it comes to like social media because I think some people watch their stuff, but ultimately when it comes to political power, when it comes to organizational or institutional strength, they don't have any. They've been laughed out of the room. But just going back to Sean Ryan's specific point or Megyn Kelly's specific point on the show, anyone who commits a crime, especially a crime against a child, especially a sexual crime against a child, lock them up, chemically castrate them, kill them if you need to. It doesn't bother me at all. I think about the thing about the Epstein files that bothers me so much is, first of all, it was President Trump who released 3.5 million pages of it. So if he's the one covering it up, then you're going to have to explain why he released 3.5 million more pages of the Epstein files than Joe Biden ever did.
He arrested
Epstein.
He arrested Epstein.
Right, exactly. You're going to have to explain why it was his DOJ. And number 3, you're going to have to explain why he called the cops 20 years ago to try to get him arrested, calling him a creep. But the more fundamental part here, and this is kind of important, say the thing. Just say the thing. Thomas Massie has said 7 months ago that he has the names of powerful people that are all implicated in this child sex trafficking ring. Okay, I want to believe you. Tell me who the people are. Say the thing. Say the crime, and then let's prosecute them. The only thing Thomas Massie has ever done was he mentioned 4 random people on the floor of the House,
but it's
none of whom were actually implicated in anything. They just happened to have been in a lineup with Jeffrey Epstein, including some Hispanic auto worker in Brooklyn that Thomas Massie then had to apologize to.
He also liked an Italian guy who had the same name as a diplomat. But, we're gonna move on to this final point because I know we wanted to talk about the Cenk thing. But, again, it's the hidden knowledge. If they hide the knowledge, then you're constantly going to be sitting there waiting for it to come out, right? I'm going to release the names. Why don't you release them now? Are you protecting pedophiles? But, we talked about this. I asked you what you might want to talk about on the show. We have 7 minutes left. I have a controversial take on this, right? You were saying I was meant to be on Piers Morgan debating Cenk Uygur. Word just got out that Cenk has been banned from the UK. The ban is completely unfounded and must be reversed. Free speech must always be protected and allowed. Shame on Keir Starmer. Now, here's my hot take on this. I don't think that the UK did anything wrong. According to their laws. Now, I made a post about this, right? If they are banning, let me go back to this because I have this queued up. If the UK is going to ban the Scottish Korean and say that he can't come in because he's pro-Israel, then they should ban Cenk Uygur and Hassan Piker, right? It's at least consistent. And by the way, I am not saying that I agree with that, the way that they run their country, but I don't have to worry about how they run their country because about 250 years ago, our forefathers stacked a bunch of British bodies, kicked them out, and said, if you want to do that shit, do it over there. And the people in the UK are very left progressive who voted in the people who are putting these speech restriction laws in. And it's kind of democracy. It's kind of what they want. And if they are applying this, you can't come into our country because you're hateful rhetoric evenly, I'm actually kind of okay with it. I think that, okay. I wouldn't say that we should ever do that in America, but
right. So by total happenstance, I actually had Tommy Robinson on my show last week to talk about the erosion of free speech in the United Kingdom. This is before I even knew I was going on Piers Morgan, so the timing just worked out really well. And his response was essentially there is no free speech. The reason I say it's a damning indictment on the United Kingdom is twofold. First of all, this is a civilization that brought us the literal concept of free speech. Documents like the Magna Carta, thinkers like Edmund Burke, John Locke, and I don't agree that this is traditionally a progressive country vis-a-vis free speech. I think that's a more modern phenomenon that has been accelerated under the Starmer government. You do have the Online Safety Act. You do have the Communications Act of 2003. So we have seen that there has been this regressive reproach coming on free speech. My issue, and I said this yesterday on Piers' show, is that it is entirely arbitrary, entirely subjective, and entirely discrete as to what the criteria is for banning individuals. And my problem with Cenk is he'll talk about, the Israel lobby is the reason I can't get in, which number one, the Home Secretary is Sabina Mahmood, who's a Pakistani British Muslim who literally hates the state of Israel. The United Kingdom also hates the state of Israel, which is why they ended all free trade negotiations. They recognize the state of Palestine. They fund the United Nations Relief Works Agency. They have essentially a military arms embargo against the country. So if you want to tell me that the United Kingdom is in the pockets of the state of Israel, you're going to have to explain why they literally hate the state of Israel. And he ignores the fact that just 3 weeks ago, pro-Israel activists, including some Jews, were also banned from the United Kingdom from attending Tommy Robinson's rally, which they don't mention.
Exactly.
So
And this
again,
is
my
like
problem is.
Hassan has the same thing, right? I've been fighting the far right for a decade. I would have never imagined the Labour government would ban me from entering the UK. And then I just write, the dude's shocked that the far left policies he's championed for years actually suck when they're applied to him. The UK government did everything like people like Hassan want done in America: open borders, multiculturalism, and shutting down hate and extremism by labeling speech dangerous. He never imagined those laws would be implemented against him because he forgets the famous last words of every useful idiot throughout history. Don't shoot, I'm on your side. When you champion these policies, 100% of the time, they will be used against you. The famous poem, First They Came for the Socialists, if you don't learn from history, you are doomed to repeat it. And these people are so ignorant that they don't think that the laws that they want to implement against their opposition will ever be applied to them, and they will.
Yeah, but you did make an important point, and it's good to mention that legally, of course, the United Kingdom is within their right to ban.
Yeah.
So I'm not making a legal argument.
Oh no, I think I think that the United Kingdom should be more pro freedom, and I love what Tommy's doing, and I'm championing what Tommy's doing. My point was simple. If the UK government is going to do it in a legal framework and they're doing it evenly across the board, hey, I think that I think that at least that's fair. I really hope that Tommy creates a movement and brings freedom back to that country, because I think that it would be a good thing for everybody to have every free society.
Yeah. My problem is I don't think they are applying it evenly. You had last year alone 12,000 UK citizens who were being arrested for social media posts, including, Facebook posts just criticizing the UK government. You also have the phenomenon whereby, as I said, it's entirely subjective. So when you have a central authority that's dictating or determining what's within the accepted bounds of the political Overton window, that's really dangerous. And I even though I'm new to the conservative movement, I was able, thank God, to know Charlie Kirk towards the very end. And he always told me, you combat bad ideas with better ideas.
Yeah.
And ironically, I don't know how many people were planning on going to Cenk's events in the United Kingdom, but I can tell you what, there's a heck of a lot more interest now simply because he's been censored and banned. And that is always what censorship leads to. It actually leads to people like moth to a flame gravitating towards those ideas, because what's the thing we're not allowed to say? What's the thing we're not allowed to hear? I want to say that, and I want to hear it. So it's actually counterintuitive and quite self-defeating. And look, it goes without saying, I abhor almost everything that Cenk Uygur stands for. I think he's delusional. I think he's too engaged in conspiratorial thinking. I think he's just wrong on politics. Yeah. But to sort of paraphrase Voltaire, as much as I abhor what Cenk says, it's really important that we as men of the West defend his right to say it.
I believe that. I believe that Cenk has a right to say it. A lot of people were going after, we have 1 minute left, but I'm going to get this point in real quick. Me and Sean Farish, who's coming up next on Ungoverned, you guys, we're going to send you over there. We were both saying when everyone was calling for Nick Fuentes to be like banned or censored or don't bring him on your podcast, I can't believe Tucker. We were like, no, let him talk, right? I think the more they talk, it's actually better for us, because our speech is not crazy. Their speech is. I want more people to hear their crazy speech. All right, boys and girls, Shabbos, go ahead and let everybody know where they can find you, what's going on, and what you got coming up. I'm going to put your page up right here. It's at Shabbos K. And
Yeah, just type in Shabbos K on Twitter and or Instagram. You could also type in my full name, Shabbos Kestenbaum, PragerU, to watch our weekly content on the PragerU channel. But I complain a lot on social media, so that's where you can primarily find me.
Awesome. Hey, man, this was great. Thank you so much for coming on. And let me know if you need anything, me to come on something. I'll be happy to work with you.
I'd love that. All right, I appreciate it, man.
All right, have a good one.
Take care.
All right, boys and girls, that was Shabbos, not Shabbos. I butchered it, but Shabbos, and that was such a wonderful interview. Sean Farish is coming up next on Ungoverned. Y'all enjoy that. I will see you tomorrow for 2A Thursday.
A partially valid, a half-truth, if you will, is being pushed.
I can't wait to find out all sorts of new and exciting things I didn't know about myself.
So you just hate Jews, bro?
Yeah, you're just an anti-Semite. Congratulations.
You're
Go
not
join.
What would you say?
Exactly.
Well, that's different. It's not different. It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's
that just we are the only society on earth who has the obligation to self-destruct, to blame ourselves for every problem that has ever existed, and we just think of ourselves as the worst human beings who are responsible for every bad.
How many Muslims are trying to stop Boko Haram? How many Muslims were confronting ISIS? How many Muslims, the extremists always win. So the peaceful majority